Welcome, everyone. What a time to be in Drupal. It's certainly the most exciting for me since I started my career about 17 years ago. My name is Balint. My nickname is Balint Brews everywhere on the internet. It's because I like to brew coffee and I like to brew software. And I've recently been brewing a lot on Experience Builder. Thanks to Acquia, I'm a contractor on Acquia's team that works on Experience Builder, and I'm gravitated more towards front end these days. I started with React about 10 years ago, and I'm very excited to bring React into Drupal. My goal here is to tell you not to be afraid of it, is to tell you that this Drupal is still the Drupal that we love, and still we will work with it the way we are used to in many ways, and in many ways not. But I think it's an exciting change, and I want to help you navigate that. So, Experience Builder, here's a page that I built with it, and the edit button takes you to the Experience Builder application. And so, what is it that we're looking at here? This is a React app, fully client-side rendered, so rendered in the browser, and we're communicating with Drupal using HTTP endpoints that the Experience Builder module creates via controllers. So yes, it's a React app, and it's heavily using front-end technologies, but also as heavily using Drupal backend technologies and existing infrastructure from Drupal core. So Drupal's power is still in it. So let's start unpacking this UI. What you see here in the middle is the actual preview of your content. It's an iframe, and it is rendered by Drupal, fully server-side rendered. That way we make sure that everything that shows up here inside Experience Builder is going to be the same that your end users see. So there is no React in here that you see here in the content. This is all, again, rendered by Drupal. On the right, you see an entity form here. So what kind of entity is this? Currently, Experience Builder ships an entity type that we named page. And if you tried Experience Builder many, many months ago, you might remember that it was used to be the article content type from the standard installation profile. That was a way for us to get started. But as the development continued, and I mean, Experience Builder is still in alpha. Wim just tagged the alpha 6 version as he was boarding the plane. We didn't want to break the article content type, and we wanted to make sure that you can still enable Experience Builder and start building with it. So therefore, we have a dedicated entity type, but that can change, of course, in the future. And this entity form here, again, this could be a node form. It also works with the node form. This is rendered by Drupal, but also rendered by React. What do I mean by that? I know it's a bit confusing. So we created a new theme engine, which lives inside Experience Builder. We named it Semi-Coupled Theme Engine. This talk could just go on and discuss this part only. Actually, my colleague Ben Mullins did that in Barcelona. I recommend that session for you to check it out. And I also created this short URL to link to the docs of the semi-coupled theme engine. I think what's important for you to understand is that everything is still rendered by Drupal. We are mapping Drupal Twig templates to this special markup that we created, which we are able to turn into React components in the front end. So these are the different templates that we are mapping here, just some examples for you to get the feel of it. And in the end, it all ends up on the UI. So why did we need this? Why didn't we just do the same as we did with the content preview? It's because we wanted a high level of interactions in Experience Builder. Whenever you change something in that form, we wanted to reflect that right away in the content preview. And the way to do that is with JavaScript. So we couldn't just have a server-side rendered form and then add some events to it. We actually needed more control. Also, because we wanted to integrate this in our undo redo feature set. So whenever you type something in there, every time you change something, we not only update the preview, but we save a newer local version of your content into our application state, and you're able to traverse through the undo redo history that way. So that's why we needed the semi-coupled theme engine, among others, and that's why we are doing this tricky bit here, but it works. But you might have noticed the work in progress label there. So most things work here. I think that's the technical term that I wanted to default to. We are determined to make all core form-related elements work here. Some of the stuff that I wanted to highlight that does not work yet is things like autocomplete. We have proven that it works. We just haven't gotten to the implementation. And also, when something consists of multiple HTML form control elements, that we still need to make that work. And also CK editor, minor thing that we still need to get to work. But the concept is there, and this is heading into the right direction. So this is a header, also showing up. And I said that this is one single entity. So what is this doing here? So if you want Experience Builder to handle your other theme regions than the content region, which normally just the entities would be considered by the content region, you can enable this in your theme, and then Experience Builder takes over, and it saves all the content, all the components that you are placing into region config entities. So you can export them, they're transferable, and it works that way. So again, this is taking over rendering the global regions. And you place the components. So I keep saying components here. All those components are stored in this field that we add to the page entity type, or any entity type that you will later on enable Experience Builder. So we store it as a JSON blob, and we store the layout and the model. The layout represents the component tree, how components are placed, the order of them, and how they are composed into each other, because you can pull a component into another one. And the model stores the data, the input that these components receive. So, like I said, I keep mentioning components. It's a bit of an overused term, but what we mean by components in the Experience Builder world is anything that you can place onto the page, into your content. And currently there are these 3 ways to place a component. And blocks are just standard Drupal blocks. They work the same way as you would expect. They show up under dynamic components, and then once you place them onto the page, the block settings form also works on the right-hand side. So they're not going anywhere. Blocks are still relevant today, because if you need to do dynamic data fetching, or you need to run any kind of custom PHP logic, you still need blocks. So what else? Of course, SDCs, single directory components, are going to be very important for Experience Builder. Single directory component is a way in Drupal to provide a front-end architecture that consists of component. This is how you can build a design system, for example. And what it means is that you have a component definition file. It's a YAML file where you describe how your component is able to receive data. And in a Twig file, you can describe the markup, which is the output of your component. And here is how I can define. So I created a simple card component here, and the title prop, for example, that I defined that my simple card can receive. That's how it's outputted in the Twig template. And then it's able to receive a date and able to receive a variant, which is going to be an enum type, meaning that the values that it accepts, it's either navy or yellow. And then I'm just setting that as a CSS class. And then finally, also very important, I defined a slot. So the slot will allow me to drag other components into this component. So let's see this in action. So I just placed that component onto my content, and now I'm able to give values to those props that I defined in that YAML file. And I just changed the color, which is really just changing a CSS class, as you saw in the Twig template. And now this is my output so far. So how did this form happen on the right-hand side? Because I only had to describe how my props are defined for my component. So this is what we call prop shape matching. it's again a topic that could be its own talk on its own. I have the short URL set up for the docs. What we are doing here is we are looking at the shape of your props, and then we generate that form out of it. How we do that? So that shape, we map that to a Drupal core field type and some settings and a field widget. And in the end, we get the actual UI from it. This is also using the semi-coupled theme engine that I mentioned before for the page entity form, because we wanted to reuse existing Drupal core infrastructure by reusing the field widgets. So again, there is a special shape of your prop, and we look at the constraints, we look at the format, enum, the JSON schema reference, anything that we can interpret, and then we come up with a field type field widget that matches that intent and the settings for the field type, and then in the end we receive a form element. And if you want to change how that form element ends up being there, there's an experimental hook. I'm not even going to link to it. I mean, the docs are linked, but if you look at the .api.php file in the XB repository, you will find an example for that experimental hook. For that, with that, what you could do is that, for example, if you have an enum with this small amount of values, maybe what you want instead of this drop down, maybe what you want is radios. So you can change that. Again, this is an experimental hook, so take it as it is. I'm going to give you some prop shape examples that you would need to use these if you're building SDCs for Experience Builder today. But very important to mention that short URL there. Whenever I need to build an SDC, this is my Bible. I mean, not the URL, but where it points at, which is a test module in the Experience Builder repository that has an example component with all the prop shapes that we can support today with end-to-end tests. So if everything is broken, we will notice our CI is going to get broken. So that's the most up-to-date way for you to look at what kind of prop shapes you can use in Experience Builder today. So these are just some of the examples. And I also put something there which is not insignificant for now in terms of UX. This is not done yet, arrays and objects. So just be aware that you cannot use those today. Two more examples. This is how you do an image. We had to define our own custom JSON schema definition for that, and this is how you define a text area. Again, I think the best source when you need to work with SDCs is this URL. You go to the all props component in our test module, and then you will see what we can support today. So what else do you need to be aware of for SDCs? We have some requirements. This isn't a complete list. I just wanted to highlight two very simple requirements that's easy to run into. I mean, easy to miss them. For every prop, you need to define a title. If you think about it, we need to be able to render that form. So obviously we need a title for that. And we also need examples, example, singular, I will get to that, for every required prop. Why is that? Because whenever we drag a component onto the content, we want to make sure we can generate the preview right away without asking input from the user. Otherwise, the twig rendering would be broken if you're relying on some twig variables which are not there. So for those, we actually want to have an example. And example is an array in the SDC schema. Here we are just grabbing the first example that you provide, and that's what's going to show up whenever the component is dragged onto the page for the first time. And of course, you need to adhere to the prop shapes that we can support today. So after all of that reading, you look into the all props component, and you make sure you follow these, and then you follow the additional requirements that I'm mentioning here, or sorry, I'm linking to here. Things can go wrong, but when they do, there's this great page built in under structure, page builder components. You can go there, and this is a list of all the components that Experience Builder can discover. All of them are enabled by default. You can disable them manually, and Experience Builder disables the ones it cannot deal with, and it tells you the reason why it cannot deal with that component. So I think this is a great way to debug what's going wrong with your SDC if you have to author one. And to wrap up, and to wrap up the SDC example, I still want to mention this area here. This is the slot. I didn't talk about that yet. So this is how that shows up here on the UI. And you can see that here I'm using the Starshot Demo Design Systems paragraph component. I am dragging that into that slot. And I am now just changing the inputs for that component. But this, I can pull any kind of component into my card. I could pull the image. I can pull anything else. So this is the real composability part of Experience Builder. So slots are also very important in that regard. So one more thing I want to mention is sometimes it takes a while to build these components. You add all these inputs. You fill in all those values in the props form. And you want something reusable. So those are called sections now. This is a section as I'm creating it. So any kind of component tree, component subtree can be saved as a section. It's essentially a copy of what you have on the page with all the inputs. And then this becomes a starting point for other pages or other instances to use the same set of components with the same set of inputs. You can think about it as very powerful copy pasting. And and of course, because of that, if I change something here, so for example, it's going to be blue now. If I change that, it's not going to affect any other instances because there is no connection here. In fact, as you drag a section on, it's not even a section. It's just a set of components on this page. So it's really just snippets. And these are called pattern config entities on the backend. So they are config entities. You can export them, and so you can transfer them and share them that way. Okay, so my question is, are you ready to JavaScript now? Because this is the time when we start talking JavaScripty things. So this was my simple card twig markup on the left. And if you haven't seen React before, I just wanted to show you how that looks like in React and using the JSX syntax. And I'm saying React because that's how in-browser components are supported right now. In Experience Builder, you might have seen it in the Dries note. You can author React components using Experience Builder using the browser. And I just wanted to give you this example. And also, the other thing I wanted to mention is that Experience Builder supports Tailwind CSS. And here I'm just showing how the previously written markup looks like with BEM style class names. And on the right-hand side, it's Tailwind. You don't have to use Tailwind. This is just a possibility. I think you should consider it. I'm a huge fan. And of course, when you look at them side by side, maybe you think that on the left that's a bit more pretty. And that is certainly true. But Tailwind brings a lot of productivity on the other hand. So we're going to be able to use Tailwind as well. So let's see that in action. This is how I create a code component. And I'm going to start with the simple card that I showed you before. And here is the markup that I've written before. I just copy-pasted it into XB. There's some global CSS that I already wrote, which are CSS variables. Then I pasted in the CSS code, and I'm just triggering a preview. And that is a preview right there in the browser. We are using WebAssembly to compile that. So we're compiling React in the browser. And here is the UI for me to define props for this component. So this is all being built in React. And now I'm adding the props here with this dedicated UI. And I'm changing to the yellow color soon with the default value that I'm sending. And this is following the same schema as you would use in an SDC definition. And that's really powerful because also in the end, everything that you see here is saved as config entities, which means that you can also export these components. You can also share these components between environments. And we are also working on some additional tooling to make that even more powerful. I'll come to that later. Now I wanted to show you a bit more complex example. I built a pricing table, and here I'm converting the CSS now to act as a Tailwind configuration instead of just regular CSS. It's still valid CSS. I just had to use the theme directive, and now everything is compiled with Tailwind, again, all in the browser. And I defined a pretty large amount of props for this one. It's an interactive element. As you can see, again, all built in the browser, and many props are here. And you will see that when I add this as a component to be ready to use in content, all those props will show up. So this is how that looks. And there's a slot at the top. And now I'm dragging in a heading component. And I just want to highlight here, this is a heading component from, again, the Starshot demo design system. That's an SDC. So we just combined here React markup with the SDC's Twig markup. So I'm able to... Thank you. Oh yeah, pro tip. You need to go into the preview mode if you want to actually interact, like you want to click on the components, because we don't allow that in the preview. So that's how my component looks like in the end. So I mentioned React a couple of times. And I did that to simplify, because this is actually using Preact in the background. You don't need to be fully aware of that. Why are we using Preact? So Preact, you can think of it as a small drop-in replacement for React. It's 3 kilobytes in total. But soon we are going to be able to fully alias it with React. So in the end, you don't actually have to know that it's using Preact. But it's really cool that we're able to build with this lightweight version without all the fancy React features that we usually don't need for these more simple components. So we have CSS transpiling in the browser. So I didn't mention that before, but when you paste in, regular CSS, not the Tailwind one, what we do there is we do auto prefixing and we do syntax lowering automatically for you. So we actually compile CSS for you, so you can use modern syntax. You don't need to worry about the prefixes, the browser prefixes. We do that automatically for you. And then, of course, when you use Tailwind, then we just compile using Tailwind CSS. One thing that's coming soon here, the way we process the global CSS is suboptimal right now, but we have plans to change that, and we are improving that. I'm just saying that in case you give this a try, you will see that global CSS currently is saved into every individual component and is duplicated on the page. So you can try, you can run into some surprises because of that, but we know how to change that, and we are on track to fix that. Another interesting feature that we are working on is supporting imports. So in Twig terminology, that would mean a Twig embed or a Twig include. An example would be that you work on a hero component and you want to include a button component. So that's another component that you have created. So importing that would be a way to reuse that in your React component. And I mentioned that we are working on tooling to make sure that if you don't want to use the in-browser code editor, you don't have to. We're going to release a CLI tool that will allow you to synchronize from your own development environment or from a CI environment into Experience Builder. Oh, and for imports, I wanted to mention that we do have some built-in packages already that we support. Just take a look at these, and you will find that up-to-date list there. There is another experimental feature that I wanted to mention related to code components. We call them code overrides. You need to enable this module to enable that in your environment. And what this does is that there are a few blocks that we allow you to override using a code component. So this is a navigation block here, and then we pass the data to your code component, and we allow you to just redefine how the navigation block looks like. This is highly experimental. We only have these 3 blocks, breadcrumb, navigation, and the site branding implemented this way. I think this is more of a concept at this point, and we will see where this goes. But this would be an easy way to do simple output changes to things without having to write backend code. Another experimental, very highly experimental feature, and I think you will see that you need to enable 2 modules. Well, first the dev mode module, XB dev module, and then the XB test extension is a reference implementation for you to extend how XB itself works, how the application itself works. And I have a quick demo of that. So once you enable those modules, this is here. So I don't know if you can see that. Those are actual kittens in place of the icons. So that also shows the status of this work. Again, it's really highly experimental. And what you see here is that this area is added by the extension. And now what's happening is that I am actually interacting with the content of the page. So I can get a list of the components that are added to the content, and then I can make updates to that list. And for example, I deleted one of the components here. So the way we made that work, and again, this is as low level, as experimental as it gets, but we exposed the Redux store of the XB app. So what is Redux? Redux is a state management solution for React. State is everything you see on the UI, every piece of data that is fetched from the backend that we need to present, every choice that the user makes. So for example, which tab is active on the UI, which component is currently being selected, which component is currently being updated. All of these are stored in state. And we expose that state to the extensions. It's exactly the same mechanism as the XB app works with the state right now. So that's why I keep saying it's very low level. And not only that, but you get access to all the logic. We call them these actions that you can dispatch to change the state. And all of these are there for you to manipulate anything that's in your state. And then the reducers are just pure JavaScript functions that take an action payload, and they know what to do with it when they have to merge them into the state. So for example, let's say you want to create a new code component. Then we dispatch the action, new component, and then the reducer know how to merge that in to the existing component data to be represented on the UI. So this is really just a start. We needed to prove this concept because it's not super clear how a React app can be extended. And of course, extensibility is still an important Drupal value. Now, of course, right now, this is all React and all JavaScript. I think we need to learn how people want to extend Experience Builder. Some of the examples that you can do, you can read the list of components that are added to your content. You can read the component inputs. You can read what's in a code component. And then you can use that, for example, to analyze the content for SEO, accessibility. You can generate more content. You can use an LLM to make suggestions to your content. You can build a link checker. I think the possibilities are really endless here. And we need to see where this goes. And I think if we start to learn about what kind of extensions people will want to write, then we will come up with higher level APIs which are a bit more friendlier than just exposing the entire Redux store. But this is how we managed to prove the concept for now. So to recap, navigating Experience Builder as a developer today means being aware of the page entity type that Experience Builder ships, being aware that the entity form for that page entity type is rendered by Drupal, but also taken over by React rendering, mapping to React components, that you can enable global regions to be handled by Experience Builder. Those end up as a config entity, as a region config entity. That Experience Builder adds a field to any content type on which it is enabled. And in that field, the component tree is stored as a JSON blob. It's important to be aware of the prop shape matching logic, at least high level, to know what kind of props you can write today for Experience Builder. I think it's cool to know about the in-browser code components. That's again an area where we need to see where we take that. And there are some experimental stuff, the overrides I showed you, and then the extensions if you want to dig into some lower level APIs. And I really hope these topics are helpful to you, and I'm open to questions. It is not possible. Yes, thank you. So the question was, is it possible to write a code component by using something else than React? So can we use anything else than React? So today it is not possible. So this is the first implementation. This was barely released a few weeks ago. So we started with React. We started with Tailwind. We wanted to start with the tools that seem the most ubiquitous to most people. But there are certainly discussions about how can we introduce more frameworks. Vue.js is definitely on our radar. Svelte, some of the changes, some of the popular frameworks are definitely on our radar, and I think this is going to happen. But first, we need to see if this whole concept is interesting enough so that it really takes off. But yeah, this is planned. So the question is, are we reading through the components markup in order to figure out what Tailwind CSS to compile? Yes, that's what we're doing.
Second question, can you put blocks inside of slots?
The question was if we can put blocks inside slots, and yes, we can.
What's the storage for that?
What's the storage for that? I don't know the answer to that. Yes?
So it looks like right now the in-browser components are just kind of one-off components, right? But you can save them, but they're not hooked up to any Drupal entities. Is there something in the future to kind of map those onto Drupal entities? Like your price fields, if I want to connect that to a product, for example.
Yes, so that goes back to another concept I did not mention. Sorry, I need to repeat the question. So the question is, currently code components, or actually any other components, how are they hooked up today to entity fields, or how are they going to be hooked up to entity fields, like the prop values you mean? And the answer to that, today they are not. So every input that you enter is saved in the field that Experience Builder adds to the entity as a JSON blob. But this is actually an upcoming item on our roadmap to make sure that you can connect field data as a prop source. So that connection can be or will be established on the XB UI. So you can say that, for example, as a prop value for this component, I want to read that field's data from the entity.
React is a good library choice, and Redux is also a really common statement as the library for React.
Okay, I'll try to summarize that. So, um, I think you're gonna need to help me with the question part. So, okay, my understanding of your question was there are some specific decisions about the versions of packages that we include in Experience Builder. And how is the future looking like in terms of allowing users to change certain versions for those packages? How can they make those decisions themselves, and how we can support that from Experience Builder? Okay, so I think this two parts to that. One, Redux is an implementation detail of Experience Builder itself. So, and I don't think it should be exposed as a public API long term. It is where we started. So I think the answer to that is it should not be visible to anyone extending Experience Builder, and we should build very nice higher level APIs to that. But your other question is the version of React, for example, to render these components. I think once we go down the road of supporting multiple frameworks, this becomes very relevant, because we need to be able to, yeah, for example, yeah, React 18 or 19, there might be some differences there that someone wants to leverage, and they explicitly, although backwards compatibility in React is pretty good, so I think it's maybe less relevant there. But again, leaving the React world, it can become relevant, and I think we will need to solve that problem. Yes.
I'm asking you to speculate because I know you haven't built it yet. But given the conversation around using other frameworks,
Yes.
do you think you could mix and match them on a single site, or would you have to pick a framework for all of your components?
Yeah, this is exciting. So the question is, given that there's already conversation about potentially supporting other frameworks, do we think, is there a possibility to mix and match different frameworks and different component outputs on the page? I think yes. The current implementation we have, actually, I actually haven't talked about that, how we render on the page. We are using Astro's island architecture, the Astro Island implementation for hydrating those components. And Astro is already super powerful in its capability to mix and match the output. So we are actually relying on that today. So I think we can just leverage that to allow you to mix and match Vue and React components as you wish. So yeah, I think that's an exciting outcome of that. Yes. That is certainly something. So what we ran into right before we released is content security policies that are emitted. I think we are aware of those, and we are working on that. I'm not going to be able to give you a more detailed answer than that. I think. Okay, Laura is helping me here. So yeah, of course, permissions. So we don't have any in Experience Builder today. What it means that everyone can do everything. So that's it is what it is today. But it's a solved problem in Drupal, the API part of it. So we are going to just leverage that and introduce permission control. That's of course not the full answer to security. Yeah. Can you please repeat the first part? Any supply chain? I can't understand. I'm sorry, can you rephrase the question? I think I can't really talk about that at this point. I think, yeah, I won't be able to talk to address that. Yes.
You said with single directory components, where is experience builder? Is it looking into the theme and then bringing those components into experience builder, or do you have to define the SDC components inside of?
No, so the question is, when it comes to those SDCs, where is Experience Builder looking to discover those? So we are actually using Core's discovery mechanism to do that. So you can have SDCs in your module or in your theme, in the components directory. So it's really nothing new that we introduced on that front. Of course, we have the logic to discover those, and we save which one of them we can actually work with. If you remember that UI showing the list of components that we discovered and the ones that are enabled versus disabled, maybe that's something to consider, but otherwise it's just core. I think you were first.
Yeah, so with your in-browser components that you're building, I assume make it, I can place it, and then I can edit it.
Yes. Sorry, again.
What happens when I break that? Like,
Okay, so the question was, with in-browser code components, they are placed, and then you can edit them. And what happens when you break them? So this is actually on our radar. It's coming up next on our roadmap to make sure that when you break them, they will break gracefully and they will not break JavaScript on the entire page. So we need to make sure that if a component breaks, it's an isolated problem and it doesn't break the entire page. We still need to make that work for SDCs as well, not only code components. I don't know who was first, sorry.
So I saw the example where you could have a React for a region. Oh, sorry, the Experience Builder in a region. It was like the
Yes.
header menu. I'm curious, is there a plan or for like having different Experience Builder components associated with different content types? Or maybe another example would be with slots to sort of limit what can be placed in different places.
Yep.
So what kind of component
Yes.
embedded in a slot limited to certain variations? So just sort of kind of like the permission set, but more just like what component level.
Yeah. So the question is, if we can limit, for example, an entity's output, we can limit what can be dragged to a certain place there, certain slot, and also for global regions, what can we place there? So the answer to that is it's also coming up. We are referring to that as content type templates, and it will be a way for you to actually build a template for your content type, and then it will of course define what components can be placed and what component inputs will need to be provided. But yes, that is the next thing that we will work on. One of them. I think yes.
Curious about implementation or implementing child themes and incorporating components that may come from a parent theme and possibly extending, or how that interaction with the child theme is directory component that was within the child theme, how that would all interact and something that I should be aware of.
So the question is about implementing child themes, so inheriting from a parent theme.
But if I want to extend a parent theme with a child theme.
If we want to extend a parent theme with a child theme, so that isn't really the concern of Experience Builder. Your theme can provide components for Experience Builder, and you can achieve the inheritance in any way you want with those components. I don't think it exists with SDCs though. You can override. Okay, so you can override an SDC. Someone is telling me here. So that is your way to make that happen. Other than that, this is, I think, outside of the scope of Experience Builder. Yes.
If you've got a bunch of single directory components or like other components that are pulling from a theme, does Drupal prevent you from turning that theme off then, or like what is done in relationship between the build pages and the theme?
Yeah. So the question is, if we add a bunch of components from a theme to a page, are we then going to be prevented from disabling that theme? No, currently not. And this is actually the same with Drupal core if you think about the blocks. Yeah, yeah. So this is not something that's solved, unfortunately.
Is there any planned separation between Experience Builder and the like in-browser component builder? Like those end up as separate things that we can opt into?
Yeah. So the question is are there plans about making the in-browser code editor optional and make it maybe a standalone module even?
Standalone.
Yes. So I think, so the thing is, if we had extensions fully working when we started working on code components, I think we would have built it as a separate module, but we didn't. So I think just to prove the concept, it was easier to put into the main Experience Builder module, but that's definitely something that's planned. I think someone at the back, yeah.
Yeah, so thinking of sites that potentially implement something like layout builder, are there any plans for like an automated migration path so that I can make my layout builder sites are using Experience Builder?
So are there any plans to provide migration from, for example, Layout Builder to Experience Builder? No explicit plans as of yet. It's certainly something that has been discussed, and it might happen at this point, but I think this is as far as we know. Oh, and Lauri is telling me that he has some news on that, which, by the way, Lauri's presentation is going to happen here at 3 p.m., so he has some news on that. I think there is a spoiler there. That so, yeah, yeah. Okay. But I want to add that if you are concerned about how you are ever going to update to Experience Builder, since you need to build something today or you already have something built today, the best way to ensure that now is to use SDCs. And I know it's not the complete answer, it's really far from it, but at least you are then using some underlying layer that will help you get there. I think you raised first. Oh, so can you repeat the?
Configuration management for code components, is that exported as regular Drupal config, or is there another way?
Yeah, so configuration management for code components, how do we export them? So they are just config entities. So you can export them. It's really the same as any other config entity. There's one but here, and that's why I mentioned that we are working on a CLI tool. Once you do that, and let's say that so there is the compiled version of the code. So you need to make sure that if you are making updates to your code outside of the in-browser code editor, you need to make sure that the compiled version is updated. So that's just something to be concerned about. But yeah, it's config entities. Yes, in the back.
How far along is this that you able to use certain methods like use effect, use state?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so how far is it from being able to use certain React hooks like use effect, use state? I actually did use use state in this demo, so it works. Thanks. I think someone was here.
The question is less technical, but it's very early in discovery, and usually the discussions like what we build first. And I'm just curious if you have any like one feature that you ask, would it be crazy if we build this and then you didn't get to the roadmap because it's like
Oh, so the question is, was there anything that during these conversations that we did for Experience Builder for the discovery phase, was there anything that we thought, oh no, that's too crazy, we can't do it? So this is the achievement of others in my team, not mine. But no, absolutely not. I mean, if you think about the semi-coupled theme engine, like what that does, and some other parts here, like this idea of the in-browser code components, and how I think we kind of did everything that was thrown. Yep.
If I may ask, like, I ask because it's fantastic job, guys, and I feel like you didn't miss anything. So yeah, big kudos.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I think that's a good time to wrap. Thanks, everyone.